Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us. I appreciate everybody being here today. I'm just doing a little checking on my part, a little housekeeping. First, a couple of things before we get started with our presentation with Nylanders this morning. I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Deanne Lautenbach from Center for Deafblind Persons. This week, we are offering several webinars throughout Monday through Thursday. We have 2 webinars a day. Check them out if you haven't already. We are going to have an interpreter, and we will also have captioning. If you do want the captioning, what I ask that you do is at the bottom of your screen, you will have a toolbar pop up and it will say live transcript. And to the side of that, first you have to turn it on if you do want the captioning. You would have to click on turn on captioning. And then to the side, you'll get a little pop-up arrow. Or next to that, click on that and it will either tell you hide subtitles, view full transcript, or view subtitles. Once you have that, once that's set up, you will find at the bottom of your screen, if you have it on right now, you can see that there are captions at the bottom of the screen. If you'd like to move that, you can. Throughout this presentation, after I'm done with my introduction, you will see only the speakers, Mr. and Mrs. Nylander, and you will see the interpreter. Throughout the presentation, if you have questions or comments, please do add those. You are allowed to do that. And when you do so, as the moderator, I will be sharing that with Jeff and Jeannie. Okay, thank you. Give me 1 second to switch the screens, and then I will let the 2 of you take over. Give me a second. Thank you.
Okay, well, here we are,
We're here.
and we are Jeff and Jeannie Nylander,
He's Jeff. I'm Jeannie.
and we live in La Crosse, Wisconsin. And that's going to be relevant during our talk as we go through just a little bit about ourselves and how we've gotten to the place we are today. First, I guess I'll start and just take a couple of seconds to give you a little bit of my background. I was born in McHenry, Illinois, back in 1962. So my birthday's coming up. Ooh, I'll be 60. Anyway, in my life, I went through Catholic school, and after high school, I did a couple of things to find myself. Took a bike trip to Canada and a few other things, and then joined the Navy. And in the meantime, Jeannie and I met, and we started our relationship during that time. But what's important about each of us as our history comes out is that we use those parts when we got together for the first time, and also the time in the year, because as we grew up, technology got a little bit better, and we were able to communicate learn to communicate the old way back then, and it has helped us very much today. And so I guess I would have been considered a monster ADHDer back then. And so my parents and my family kept me very much in check, lots of rules, and it has helped me through my life. And it's also helped me as a guy, because my mother spent a lot of time making sure I not only knew how to make my bed, but do the dishes and all those good things. And that has very much helped us in our relationship now, because we have to help each other. And I've found that I need to step up and take care of a lot of those things that probably a lot of guys don't always do. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Jeannie and let her give a little bit of history of what she went through and growing up. So.
Hi there. I was born in Chicago, Illinois, and I was also born 3 months early. So I was put in the wonderful incubator with lots of oxygen. And the people that are visually impaired, maybe some of you understand that, because way back then, being in an incubator did not help the eyes for that long, because they were experimenting with the oxygen back then. And so I didn't put 2 and 2 together at the very beginning that, I could have been having some trouble, but I always wore glasses. And of course, at the teenage years, I tried to take them off as much as possible because I didn't like them, but I wore them when I had to. I was raised in a home where it wasn't as structured as Jeff's. So my conditioning or my learning growing up was more like a survival thing, and you learned what you needed to learn when you had to learn it. So I always had trouble in school. I was always put in all those wonderful slow classes that they didn't call them, what is it, disability room or whatever. They just said the slow class. And it took us a whole entire year to read a book. I remember in high school, and the class, we read it every single day, and everybody had to take so many sentences and stuff like that. But I was also dyslexic, and getting directions and sequence is a major thing that I work on daily still. And that doesn't help the situation of being totally blind and also hearing impaired. I was not totally blind until I was 48. And at that point, they had diagnosed me with something called autoimmune retinopathy, and had no idea what that was, but I was in a lot of pain. And my eyesight was just doing bonker things. At times I was seeing things that I wasn't even seeing, and they said those are, as my optic nerves were breaking and my retinas were tearing, it made for really poor sight. And my mind just sort of tried to make pictures that wasn't there at first. And then it got so painful that they had to remove the eyes in 2010, which one, I was 48, I think, back then. And so now I have 2 prosthetic eyes, and I have to wear hearing aids because certain situations that I went through has made me have to wear my hearing aids because
Concussions.
and I've had many concussions, and I'm surprised that my nose is not really big, because it's always right above the bridge of my nose and on my nose and the forehead that the concussions come to. And that was just normal wear and tear of daily trying to get around. I would say that. So is that enough?
Well, what was your passion?
First of all, Jeff and I got married in 81, and my passion was to be a good homemaker and wife. And I totally submerged myself in being married and having my children. And I always wanted to keep up with my artwork, because that was the one thing that was steady to me, that I could create and sort of get my emotions out on my artwork. And that has helped me throughout the years. I've had to really change my way of at looking at art. Ha ha ha. I now am learning to adjust to different styles of art, and I'm trying to get into more textile art because of not being able to see the colors. I can see that. Yes. That wasn't mine, that was his.
Mhm. Yeah.
But the textile art is so helpful to work with the fingertips, because when they removed my eyes, they just removed my they removed my eyes one by one, and they did a wonderful job because it stopped the pain for quite a while. But when they did that, they literally removed them and said, see you in 8 weeks. And so I had to learn what to do. I had to sit up in bed, or not a bed, chair. I wasn't allowed to sleep in bed for 8 weeks. And I had to learn how to really restructure my life being blind, because I was able to see Jeff's eyes before they removed my eyes, and my grandgirl's eyes, and my kids' eyes when they got really close to me before they took me in the surgery room. So I was able to see enough. And then the one eye they took on the one day, and then they took the second eye 2 weeks later, because they did an old-fashioned what is it,
Yeah.
procedure. And
Okay.
yep,
So let's go back in history just a little bit more.
I'm older.
Well, yeah, Jeannie's a cradle robber.
Yep.
She's a year older than I am. But we, as you'll find as we speak, we both went back to school. I was a construction electrician in the Navy, and we spent the first 5 years together, married, only about 17 months together, face to face. The rest of the time I was deployed all over the world for 9 months at a time, in areas where back then there was no communication. And one thing that really helped us in that part was Jeannie and I, going back to when we first met, we talked on the 70s version of the internet. We internet dated back in the 70s, which was on the CB radio. And so for about 6 months, Jeannie and I had never met face to face, and we talked on the radio. And we both came from families that were very traditional. You could not call on the telephone. It wasn't appropriate for a girl to call a guy in my family and tie up that phone. You know, we just had the one dial phone. This is going back.
Yes.
And in Jeannie's house, the phone was not to be tied up. So as we met on the CB radio and we talked over the airwaves, usually late in the evening, and we got to know each other first as friends, and then finally we got to meet. And this would have been in 1980.
You do the numbers.
Yes. And so the reason we bring that up is because when we got married, and I had already joined the Navy, and Jeannie and I met up and we got married and got together, and within 6 months I was 14,000 miles away. And so there was no way to communicate except over a ham radio system that the Navy had called Mars. And so 3 times a week for 3 minutes, we would be able to talk with radio operators in between. Hi, honey, I love you. Over.
Oh,
And
yes.
and so we really had to put everything we had into those 3 minutes over a radio that everybody else listened to. But you know what? It was so easy and natural because we had done that for 6 months before when we were dating. And that has come all the way around now for that communication piece, because now that Jeannie is blind and can't see my reactions, we found that we have to go right back to that type of communication, because there are other forms of physical communication that people that are sighted use and take they take it for granted. And because Jeannie can't read physical movements and stuff, and head nodding and all that, it's come back to play with our communication. But so after those 5 years in the Navy, Jeannie and I decided to leave. Gulfport, Mississippi is where our home port was. And we moved up here to La Crosse, Wisconsin. And it was a 4-hour drive from any family that we had. And Jeannie's family had actually moved to Texas. So we were on our own. But at 24 and 25 years old, with a 3 and a 4-year-old child, it was natural for us because we were in the Navy. We moved all over. We were expected to do that. So we grew up really fast back in that day. And it served us well, especially now looking ahead to, as Jeannie had developed her condition. And then I also have a couple of disabling situations. I was exposed to toxins while I was in the Navy with Agent Orange, and now I have lost the use of my legs and feet. And also I have hearing aids, and I have trouble with my ears. And so we both have to use everything that we have just to try and communicate and make it through the day. But when we moved up here, as Jeannie mentioned, she loved raising a family and just being part of the community. We both learned early in our lives that being connected to the community is so important. Church, scouting,
Boys and
you know,
Girls
Boys and
Club.
Girls Club, the Y,
Mhm.
all of those activities we did with our kids. And we didn't just have 2 kids. Our kids each had about 4 or 5 friends between our daughter and our son, who are now going to be 40 and 39 this year. Between them, we had 10 or 12 kids in our house all the time, calling us mom and dad. And so we just immersed ourselves with, that was our extra work. And so now those kids are all in their 30s and 40s. They help us. We run into them all over the city. And La Crosse is not a big city. It's only about 50,000, but it's like a series of small towns. And so for us, having those connections and having built up all of that community spirit for all those years, it really has come back to help us as we try and manage and stay in our own house and be independent together. And so,
And adjusting to we were in different homes because I'm so sorry. We were in different homes trying to adjust to our disabilities. Our old house had many stairs, and I did a lot of falling down the steps. And so it just wasn't a safe environment. And so we thought, okay, we're going to have to move. The one year we moved to 4 different places, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And now we had problems with the different ceilings that we were in. One condo we were in, the ceilings were so high that it echoed everywhere. And so when the echo would echo, I couldn't find the doorways out. And that wasn't safe. That wasn't safe if we had a fire or needed to get out quickly. That was one area that we had to consider, was how our living environment dealt with us and our disabilities. So we moved around, and then we found out that, we're really going to have to make a home where we can still live and be active and hopefully stay here the rest of our lives, because I don't want to pack anymore. Packing and putting away things, being blind is not fun, as some of you people will find out. Trying to memorize and keep things organized is very hard. For me, being organized was not one of my normal things I did. And so I loved being spontaneous and moving things around. And I found out I can't do that as much because I trip over things more. And so I don't do that as much now.
Mhm.
And now we're in a home that is handicap accessible, and we're very thankful that we have it. The VA helped us tremendously to be able to get a home that is handicap accessible, which means it has ramps. When Jeff drives the truck in with his hand, because he uses hand controls in the truck, and which we found that we had to use quickly, because the more his feet, the feeling left in his feet, he couldn't feel how hard he was pushing down on the brake. And we did a lot of whiplash, but that's okay.
I don't have any hair. No.
No,
No,
I didn't pull
sorry.
that. Go ahead.
No. Well, and we'll take just a step back to
Okay.
the sort of the mid part of our lives as the kids started to get older. I was a maintenance manager for a chain of grocery stores, electrician from when I was in the Navy. And so I was on call all the time. And as a maintenance person, you learn real quick, as I did in the Navy overseas, you learn to fix it right if it breaks, so that you don't have to go back again. And so my mind works that way. And between that, fixing things, and also Jeannie, when the
I'm going to
kids
break you things.
when the kids were off in school all day, Jeannie decided to pursue a career in art and education, and she went back to college, to
That's my head site.
Viterbo University, and she went part-time and made sure her classes didn't conflict with after the kids got off school and those kind of things. So it was a part-time thing. And so after my reserve time and everything else in the Navy, I was able to get a grant to go back to school. And we were both 35 years old. And
Go ahead.
we made the decision. We prayed about it.
Yes.
And we talked about it a lot. We couldn't get too much support from the friends, neighbors, people from church that we needed, because they all looked at us like we were nuts. Why would you have teenagers, you have house payments, car payments, you're going to quit your job, you're both going to go to school full time to change careers at 35.
Well,
and at that time, we're talking 1997. At that time, it really wasn't in the cards. Nowadays, it's pretty acceptable for non-traditional students to go to college,
Right.
to retrain. But at that time, we decided all four of us to be in school. And it was crazy, to be exact.
That's an understatement.
Uh, Jeannie was at Viterbo College. I was at the University of Wisconsin La Crosse. And through my discoveries with the VA, they said, you need to be a history teacher. And so I thought, oh, this pretty good match. I spent time all over the world in the Cold War. I got pictures, that's cool. I enjoy history. And so the two of us went back to college and we lived a college life. And our lives revolved around our kids in high school. They also revolved around midterms and finals. We even got to the point where after finals were all over, we'd go to the Super 8 and spend the night in the pool, just to have a
All four of
shutdown.
us.
And it was very interesting. For those of you that are familiar with technology back then, all four of us were in school with an Apple IIc computer and a dot matrix printer. And Jeannie will share one story with our son
Oh, yeah.
that made her panic before a final.
Well, the computer that we used, it was a type you had to tear off the sides and had a bunch of little holes and stuff like that. And the one day I was trying to get a paper done. It was a final paper that was due. And our son decided, Brian, he decided to change the computer to Spanish. I don't read Spanish. I wish I would have learned Spanish, but I didn't. And needless to say, my paper came out in Spanish. And so I had to go down to Logan High where he was at that day. And I had to go and I took him out of school and I said, you will turn this back to English so I can get my paper done. And so we learned to adapt. So that's always been our theme through our relationship and our family is adapting.
Well, and we definitely attribute all of this journey to God and his power, because most people don't have a journey like ours already. But then these things that we can go back to help prepare us for what we have, our journey in the future. And not only the tools for teaching, both Jeannie and I graduated a day apart in December of the year 2000. And so our son graduated from high school that July, and our daughter graduated that next year. And so we all did very well. We passed. But that was about the time in Jeannie's life where when she got to college, there is where they started to identify her disability with the dyslexia. Before that, dyslexia was not a recognized, if it was, it wasn't recognized in the area that we lived in. And so they did not support Jeannie at all when she went to high school. But what was the grant that you got when you went back to school?
I got a really small displaced homemaker grant, which I knew where I was at all times. I wasn't displaced, by the way.
And
I had a wonderful instructor that she was in the art field, and she came up to me the one day and she goes, Jeannie, I think you need to be tested. Don't get me wrong. Please don't think I'm putting you down, but you work so hard, but yet you're coming very short of trying to pick out the important stuff and things. You're taking a long time to do a lot of reading that I've noticed, and I think you need to be tested because I think you might have a learning disability, and which wound up that I did. And I was very grateful that she even asked me, because I wouldn't have gone and got tested, because I would have just blown it off and saying, you know, I just got to learn harder. I got to work more. And that's not the way you do it when you have a disability. You do work very, very hard. However, you also need the tools to get you through things, and that might help. And so I got,
Unfortunately,
yeah. Go ahead.
at the time, the school that Jeannie went to did not have a support services program. And so, because I was already in the support services program at UWL, Jeannie made the decision to move over to the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse. And so both of us got to use that program. And what were some of the tools that they offered for you at UWL?
That's where I started. For the people that are visually impaired, you'll remember the 4-track cassette recorders. When you're dyslexic, you were able to get a reader, which was from, let's see, the National Library for the Blind and Dyslexic. It changed its name over the years. And I used a 4-track player to listen to all my books. I was able to get a person to take notes because I had a hard time picking out what was important in the lessons. And so that helped me tremendously to get through. But when I was tested, the doctor said, you're not going to make it through college. And I made it through high school. I was the first one in my family to make it through high school. And I was bound and determined that I was going to make it through college. And with Jeff and the good Lord's help and my kids, we all pulled together and I got through it. But it was very, very hard. So in that process of learning that you got to work real hard and keep at things, don't give up, that helped me and prepared me to when I started losing my sight to not give up.
Jeannie is very humble, and she skipped over one part with the university, and that is once she found out those tools and once she got on the right track with the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse, the Viterbo was a college which was not under a federal program, and they changed to be a university. And so once that happened, Jeannie went back to where she started from because she loved the art program. She loved the people that were there. And she let them know she was not leaving for anything they didn't do, except they weren't, they didn't have the right program. Well, she proceeded to register back her junior and senior year full-time, and went back there and said, this is how it's done. You must do it this way. Became a very, very staunch advocate for them to modify that once we found out that that was their mandate once they changed to be a university. And so Jeannie was one of the pioneering students who went and got them to put together a support services program, which they only had one person at the whole university who helped. And that person was basically going on what Jeannie's recommendations were. And so now they have a complete office with 12 people at that university running a support services office. But Jeannie was one of the pioneering students who got them on the right track. And so when she graduated with honors, with a bachelor's degree in art and education. And it was just amazing to see that you know, she was put in that position for that. And that's I guess part of what we've always tried to do, even in coming and doing this, is we want to continue to make sure that we're advocates, and the things that we are trying to get through to people, they're supposed to be done. by law they're supposed to be done.
Right.
And if they're not, we're going to point it out. And that's
Right.
really great. So now we're at a point where both of us have graduated with bachelor's degrees, and our kids are just about ready to graduate. We help them to get into one into college and one off into the Air Force. And so to us, that next transition was to go into teaching. And it took Jeannie a little bit longer because art teachers they like die in their jobs, don't they? I mean,
Yeah.
they don't give up
You have
their
to wait
jobs.
forever in their spot.
Yep. And so Jeannie worked at some department stores and some other things just to bring in income. And so
Art director at the
Yep.
Boys and Girls Club.
In those experiences with Boys and Girls Club, art director, the Y, some of those things, they added to your experience. And also with me, I went into teaching, and then found that my niche was not only teaching, but in special ed. And through Boy Scouting and through teaching and the jobs I had, I went back and got a master's degree in special ed, and
Yep.
it was cross-categorical special ed. So I had all of the facets of accommodations and teaching. Well, no one would have ever believed or understood that now learning both Jeannie learning her education with teaching and art and adaptive type things, and me with special ed, we'd have to use it on ourselves, and we'd have to use all of the knowledge that we gained through all of our education, not only to set up our own home, but then also help others just to make it in their daily lives. And I guess that's where we know that was God guided, and there was
Right.
no way that we could have planned to have these come this way.
We had a lot to give back,
Right.
because we've been very fortunate to have people in our lives that they helped us through a lot. And for the people that are out there now with newly disability people, don't give up. Keep your life. Just learn different ways and explore as much as you can. And yes, it's going to be hard. I won't lie to you. It's going to be hard, but there's wonderful organizations out there that can help and direct you to how to learn the way you need to learn.
Don't be afraid to ask, first of all. One of the situations that we found, and we mentioned before, we moved to La Crosse. Well, La Crosse is like the outback of Wisconsin, and it's a great place for tourism. It's a beautiful area with bluffs and rivers and just an old tradition from way back. Unfortunately, La Crosse is not a center or a hub for most people with disabilities.
We're going to change that.
We are. Most people live in, Madison or Milwaukee or Chicago, where the services are, provided, or there are schools for them there. And that's great. But in this day and age, especially with virtual education now and some of the tools that can show up at your door in a day or two, we have really tried to push and advocate for people in our area to really speak up and get together. And a couple of ways that we do that, Jeannie runs a visually impaired group here in town. And even before COVID, we are very much traditionalists, and getting out into nature, working with our hands, getting out and doing things, especially in the art field, and just enjoying daily life without worrying so much about the accommodations that have to be made, but understanding there's going to have to be accommodations. And so we try real hard to address the issues like transportation. If we have people that want to come physically to our home, which, as Jeannie mentioned before, we worked with the engineers at the VA, tore our old house down and brought in a modular home that was built with as many accommodations as we could pack in here for both of us so that we could stay here. Because part of the issue, as most know, the county and the state, once you get into their programs, they bring people out to make sure that you have what you need. And if you can't provide those things, they're going to provide you with somewhere else to live, and it may not be where you want. So we really have spent a lot of time the last three years now, putting everything we can into this house, but then opening it up to
share it with others.
Groups that we would like to have in a normal setting. One of the things that a lot of people we've talked to have said, well, I'm really getting sick of going to a public building. But public buildings are the only places where the American with Disabilities Act is it's supposed to be a mandate. So after a while, you just go into a public place all the time. And if we're doing something fun and just personal, why can't we do it in a home? And so we have put handicap ramps and attached garages and sliding doors or pocket doors and widened all of our spaces and wheelchair height. We've got a whole list of things that we've done to the house so that people can come and enjoy with us. If they have a disability, they can also come here and feel like they're at home. And it's important to us to show that off and to try and get other groups or people that maybe can put some money aside to help others to stay in their homes. I think it's probably one of the most important things about being disabled ourselves, but also in working with people with disabilities. They want a thing that they can do themselves in their own place. And so for us, we hope to be able to be in this home, in this area for a long time to come.
Yeah.
Like 20, 30 years at least. And so we want to try and share that with everybody, how to do it, what our tips and tricks are. Part of some of the adaptations that we've done in the house have been totally because something went wrong or
I gotta tell you.
no, go ahead.
Okay. Being a person that unfortunately I lead with my nose and my forehead sometimes, which I'm learning that not to do that, and stick my arms properly out like I'm supposed to. Since I've had so many concussions, and usually the concussions come from a lot of doorways and open doors and open cupboards. And that's all something that has to stay organized and stay the same way. But when I was, with each concussion, Jeff took a pool noodle, and those are round foam things, and he cut out like a slice of pie in one of the foam noodles, and then he attached them to the doorways. Every time I hit my head, he'd stick one up there. And so eventually our house looked like it was a boxing gym, and all we had to do was attach rope to it because we had all the bouncing things to bounce off of. But we've had to learn to do stuff like that. As everybody knows, the digital world is out there, unfortunately. And I find the old stuff that has knobs to turn are easier to label. We have a oven that I had many people come to and say, I don't know how to, I don't know how to tell you how to use this. It's making beeps, but I don't know. And so Jeff came up with this,
Plexiglass.
is that plexiglass?
Yep.
It's thick plastic, really thick plastic. And he made holes around where the numbers were. And then he put Braille, using one of those Braille labelers, and he put that over each number. So I knew which number, because I couldn't go fast enough before the thing would time out. So like setting the oven at 350, and then push on. And so it was just like, I was too slow. So he made one of those, and he adapted it to my needs. And that was something that's not in the books. You have to adapt your home to what's going to work for you.
But I also put a hinge on it. So if I want to move fast because I'm sighted, I can lift it up and then just push all the buttons real quick and then put it back down. And
Yeah.
Jeannie said, "That's cheating." I said, "No, that's adapting for both of us." And
Yes.
so a number of other things, and as technology gets better, these are the things that still take a lot of work, but we have adapted our home with, I know I'm going to pay for this, with Alexa. And so in
Don't
that,
say her name. It's Lady
She didn't hear
A.
it.
No.
or did I unplugged it? Okay. Always cut the power when you don't want to do it. But anyway, we have a number of things, and I watch I watch, go through all the technical stuff to
YouTube
find
helps.
the new contraptions, I guess. And we have a number of things that are all tied together with Alexa, and let's see, we have a microwave now that it will control. We have light switches, and people say, "Well, why do you have light switches?" Well, it's not for me, it's for Jeannie, because our daughter and some other people have been concerned when Jeannie's in the house by herself, that there's no lights on because she doesn't need lights. But or if there's a light
I
that's left
save the
on,
most energy.
yeah. And if there's a light left on, Jeannie can ask, and it will say, it'll turn a light on or off. So she knows that there's a light on, which makes it look like somebody's home. Also, we have televisions, which those are always challenging
Yes.
to try and get a station on there, but at least it does. We do have at least one now that interacts, and we get a little forceful with it at times. I won't say we swear at it, but we probably do. We have a coffee pot. We have a Ring doorbell that speaks. And also, and this goes towards my talk at 1 o'clock, the fire alarm system. I replaced one of the fire alarms, the fire and smoke and carbon monoxide alarms, with a unit that's tied in. So if I'm not home,
To Alexa.
yes, and if I'm not home, it will talk in the house and say what's wrong. It will also go over my phone, and we can also have it sent the signal to the fire department. And then also
the thermostat.
Yep, it's tied to the thermostat, and
Yeah.
all the digital technology now. Jeannie can ask, what's the temperature in here? She doesn't even have to say, if I want air conditioning or heating on. It just, I want this temperature, and it sets the temperature, and so she can ask it at any time.
But all technology is not that easy.
Right.
And
if the
know
power
that
goes out, then you're back to ground zero anyway. But also, let's see, am I missing anything?
yes.
There are things you can request it to make phone calls in the event that you don't want to mess with the phones. And also, I think we use it just for basic weather, basic information in our area, how to dress, what's the forecast, some of those kind of things. And we have 2 or 3 of those systems in the house. And so we've just, learned to rely on those because they save steps. They save
They've helped-
us interacting, because before that, Jeannie would yell out and say, "What's it gonna do today?" Well, if I didn't have my hearing aids in, I'd go, "What? Why? I can't hear you." And so she's blind, I'm deaf, and the guide dog can't speak. So we got all 3 of them covered,
Right.
And so it is that back and forth, that communication. You have to be able to understand from all of those things. And we just listed off just a couple of things, and I know you got a couple more things you
Yes.
wanted to mention. So
When it comes to technology, one thing I've learned is don't try to learn it all at once. I was told that by a couple people, don't try to learn it all at once. And I thought, oh, I'm going to try to learn it all at once. Well, it put you more behind than ahead, because I wanted to learn Microsoft Word. I wanted to learn Outlook. I wanted to learn JAWS. I wanted to learn all the different things that would help, like NVDA and JAWS. And oh my goodness, I overwhelmed me with so much stuff to learn all at once in Braille. And I've learned through the years that if you take small bites of things, it's a whole lot easier. I don't go into Microsoft Word and expect to know how to file or to make certain kind of papers or anything like that. Right now, I'm just learning the basics of how to set your regular paper up to just type. Deanne, Deanne found me a wonderful journal. Since I'm having trouble writing the Braille, because for one thing, when you write Braille, you write it from right to left with a slate and stylus, and you read it left to right. Well, when you're dyslexic, what I was doing, and I didn't know at first, I was actually writing it right to left, but upside down, because I thought that was supposed to do it that way. So that put things back a little ways for a while. Then I found out, okay, somebody had given me an old Perkins Braille writer, and the first thing I thought, this is great. I finally got a Braille writer. I'm gonna, get going on it. And I asked Jeff where the ink was, and you don't need ink for a Braille writer. It doesn't need ink because it makes the Braille dots. So you learn throughout the way how to handle things little by little, and don't push yourself too hard, which you're probably going to try to do, because you want to be, if you're visually impaired, you want to try to be the best blind person. But there isn't, every person has different disabilities, and at different stages. So you really got to just accept where you're at that day. And we both go back when we get frustrated with technology, when it doesn't want to work right. We both go back to the radio. We'll go back and just listen to radio, or I'll listen to podcasts and just try to tune off the different organizations like ACB Radio and NFB and AFB, which is American Foundation for the Blind, American Council of the Blind, Wisconsin Council of the Blind. They have so many podcasts now that it helps tremendously just to go and listen I do not watch a lot of TV because, first of all, it's hard to figure things out.
Finding descriptive shows, but then also how that is described and what's going on with the movie and those kind of things. But there are times when we want to go back so simple. We will grab fishing poles and we will go down to the river and say, this is back to basics. And in Jeannie's case, we call her the sheephead queen because she literally takes her shoes off and wraps a fishing line around her big toe and sticks it over the dock and waits for that fish. And she pulls in huge sheephead from the river.
I catch
And-
more than sheephead.
Yes, you do. But so it's funny, but having that list or that toolbox of all those things from the most simple to the most complicated. And what both of us have had to learn to do, and we're learning every day, is asking for help.
That's the hardest thing, I think.
And for me, it's hard because Jeannie will hear when I walk through the house with grab bars, and I have leg braces, and I try not to wear them as much in the summertime. And so she will hear me clomping, and she'll say, you need to sit down. I hear you're tired, you're clomping, and me, I'm just trying to plow through things. And with Jeannie, she will sit for a long time trying to get something from beginning to end. And
I
so
don't know when to step away from it.
so both of us just get to the point where we try and listen to each other. And there's a few at the end of the day, it's like, stop telling me what to do, or stop warning me what's going to happen. And so
It's hard because when you have sight and you lose it, when he goes or grunts, I think he's like sighing and is like mad at me or something. And he was just bending over to try to tie his shoe. Different sounds make different resources, I guess. So you have to sort of try to listen to each other a whole lot, because otherwise you're going to wind up missing a lot of different key notes or key sounds. Laughter is the best thing in the whole world when it comes to when frustration comes. Find a way to laugh together.
one of the things that we did with our house is we put a screened in front porch. And we've really been enjoying it the last couple of days. But got a bird feeder out there, we got some flowers out there, and we enjoy the birds and the sounds. Jeannie's been fighting with a squirrel who gets up on the mailbox and the screen and barks at her. And so those noises, but the beauty of just being outside, but controlling that. Those are the types of things that we're just aiming for every day. It's slowing down the outside world, but at the same time, it's something that we try and do together. We revisit things that we did 40 years ago when we were dating. We listened to records. We have a couple of different record players. We still have our records.
Yes, we do.
And Jeannie can play the records. They're simple, they're easy to do. And so the sound and the quality.
They still scratch when you play them, but it
Yep.
just sounds normal.
Right.
Jeff, Jeannie,
So
this
I
is
think we're-
Deanne. Just wanted to let you know it is 11 o'clock.
Okay.
If you guys would wrap up, and Jeff, I have those resources for you if you'd like me to share those.
yes, please. We have a number of tips and tricks and tools that we're going to put up at the end here. And we tried to put as much as we could in there just so that you can reference for later. And we spoke of a number of them. So, but
We thank you for listening and putting up with us.
please use us as a reference and a resource through the center.
Yep.
You
And
can,
perfect.
yeah, keep talking, Jeff, sorry.
No, that's okay. And if I'm not an accredited repairman, but if somebody has a Perkins Brailer, thanks to YouTube and
He knows how to
enough
fix
of practice, if somebody needs one fixed and they don't have the resources, I'm pretty good at fixing them. I've done a number of them. So
You're welcome to
please,
contact him,
yep, I need things to do.
so I don't have to break things.
Yeah. So, well, thank you very much. And thank you so much for the center for allowing us to talk today.
Yes. Thanks, guys, girls.
Well, hold on a second. I'm gonna pull this down. This is Deanne, and I just want to say thank you to both of you for sharing your experiences. I was on mute. That was probably a good thing because I got a lot of laughter from the stories you shared because it's real life. So thank you both for the
You
time.
wanted real life.
I did. You hit the nail on the head. I thank you very much. And I'm sure that everybody who joined us today appreciate your experiences as well. Thank you.
Don't ever give up, any of you.
Okay.
Keep going.
Thank you so much.
Right.